I know you've been waiting patiently all week. Today, six external areas of continuous due diligence that many small business owners miss. Stay tuned.
I'm David C. Barnett, and you're tuned in to Small Business and Deal Making, the podcast, YouTube channel, and blog where I talk about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium sized businesses while controlling risk. So, if you're looking to take control of your future through buying a business one day, or if you already own a business and you're looking to grow or exit, you've come to the right place. I talk about interesting things, I talk to interesting people, and I answer your questions every week right here. So, be sure to hit like and be sure to hit subscribe, and let's get to it. Are you thinking of growing your business or beginning a journey into entrepreneurship? Take a shortcut to success by buying an existing and profitable business the right way. Visit businessbuyeradvantage.com and learn more about my online training, group coaching, and consulting services designed to help you win.
All right, everyone, welcome back. So, this week we're continuing with the concept that due diligence is not just for when you buy a business, it is for all the time whenever there is an area of concern that could create a huge material problem for a business. Whenever there's potentially an expensive issue that could build up over time or be a threat to your existence, then you've got to make keeping an eye on that thing part of the routine of ownership. Okay. And so last week we talked about 11 different internal areas within your business that should be kept, that you should be keeping an eye on, or have a process around a regular review, such as an annual review, for example. Today we're going to be talking about external things. So the first one we're going to be talking about is vendor and supplier selection. So you may not know this, but when I was younger, I actually spent a couple of summers as a university student working in a purchasing department of a pretty big organization. And I learned a lot about buying stuff. And so, I was like the junior person, summer student there. So I bought a lot of small stuff. They even gave me a credit card. And if the IT department needed 35 cables of a certain length for Ethernet wire or whatever, like I'd be the guy who would order it, right? But when it came to the bigger stuff that we would be issuing RFPs for, then there was a more involved process, and I got to really get some insight into the way these guys thought because professional purchasers understand that it's not necessarily about winning in the moment. You know, if you go and you talk to your suppliers and you've just read Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, and you go in there and you use all your Jedi mind tricks on that other company, and they give you a really great deal, you think, wow, I just got a really great deal. Now, here's the problem. What if you are buying a mission critical item or input into your business from the supplier? Like, what if they are the supplier of your CRM system for your HVAC company and you're going to base your entire marketing program on information held in the cloud by these guys? Or what if you are selling, or manufacturing a certain kind of thing and you rely upon a machine and you need to know that spare parts are going to be available for that machine going forward into the future, right? Not only do you want to make sure that you get as good a deal as you can, you want to make sure that these people are around to support you over the long term. And what does that mean? It means they need to be profitable. And this is something that very few business owners think about. But in the world of big business, they think about this all the time. Is if we buy this from you at this price, are you going to be profitable? Is our account going to be profitable? So that you will want to continue to be attentive to our needs and be available to help us. Because if we're going to base our business in part on this stuff that you're selling us or the machines you've sold us, then we need to know that you are a reliable long term vendor, right? And so this is where, if you use, great negotiating skills to get the lowest possible price and there are no other great number of alternatives, you can end up in a problem. And so some big companies will actually have a strategy where they want to have more than one supplier of a certain input, and they will give orders back and forth between the two. They'll make one a primary supplier, they'll keep giving some small orders to another one, and then maybe they'll flip flop. right? And the whole idea is that they want to create a competitive field for their suppliers so that they have options with from whom to buy, and that the competition will keep the price as low as it can go, but they never end up in a position where one of those companies goes out of business and now they're stuck with only one supplier, because that's risky, right? Just like we avoid customer concentration, supplier concentration has a whole bunch of risks on its own as well. And so investigating your suppliers and understanding who they are and that they can make money doing business with you is important. Even large national companies, even a big publicly traded company, they may be profitable overall, but I've seen companies like that close local branch offices. And then all of a sudden, the delivery costs and stuff go up for you if you want to keep buying from them. So you want to have a really good idea. Is it going to make sense for them to supply me long term? So again, this is an area of due diligence and it's continuous because you have ongoing relationships with your vendors. Second area. So, business partnerships and joint ventures. What do I mean by this? Well, you can do business with another company and you can also do joint ventures. So, an example of a joint venture might be if there are two companies, a roofing company and a window company. And, both of these companies are serving homeowners that are involved in renovations, right? And if you've ever owned an older home, you'll know that at a certain point, maybe you start to consider a series of renovations over a window of time. So over the next 5 or 6 years, I'm going to rehabilitate my house and try to do it maybe without borrowing money. And so I might do my roof one year and I might do some windows the next year. I myself owned an older home at one point where I got new windows installed for like 4 years in a row. I just every year I got the same guys back and I bought a few more windows from them and they came and put them in. I just kind of spread that out instead of doing it all at once and getting a loan. So the two owners of these companies might get together and say, hey, wait a minute. You know people doing renovations and I know people doing renovations. Why don't I mail an offer for your windows to all of my roofing clients from the last 5 years and you do the same for me? Right? And so now what's happening is the whole idea is to get this warm referral from a trusted supplier. So if I did my roof with the roofing company, I really liked them and trust them, and then I get a letter from them with some kind of proposal, discount, or special for windows. I'm going to call the window company. Now, that letter, that joint venture outreach, and you see this a lot from big companies where they'll send you an offer from their partners or whatever. These are joint ventures. It's a great way to grow your business, by the way. Here's the issue though. I do business with the window guys. If they don't give me the same level of service and satisfaction that I expected from my relationship with the roofing guys, my negative experience with the window guys will then reflect upon the roofing guys because there's an implied endorsement from the roofers that if they are the top-notch customer care and service people, that they are referring a similar kind of experience, similar kind of operator to me. And so if you're going to do this kind of joint venture thing, you really have to determine whether the people you're doing the joint venture with are up to snuff with respect to the quality and standards that you have developed for your business, right? Um, it's the same issue with respect to any kind of referral relationship. I get email or messages on LinkedIn all the time where people, I got one this morning. A guy said, hey, I'm a web developer. If you refer people to me, I'll give you 20% of whatever they buy. I'm like, dude, I don't know you. I don't know if you do good work. I don't know if you're a con artist. I don't know if you're a scammer. Like, why would I stake my reputation on giving your name out to anybody? Right. And if you're sending those messages on LinkedIn, this is why it doesn't work for you either. Right. You have to build real relationships where you can demonstrate the quality of your care, concern, and skills so that other people feel confident referring you. So this is, business partnerships and joint ventures. Area number three, real estate. So I'm going to expand this to be location. So obviously, if you're going to lease a space or buy a building, there's a huge amount of due diligence that goes into there, but it's continuous in with respect to your location because over the course of time things change, right? So cities build and close roads, new highways get built, new developments go in, things get approved. A highway gets built and then there's a bunch of farms and then all of a sudden there's approvals for other kinds of development. And if your business is in a certain area, new developments, changes in traffic pattern, the installation of a new public transit system, for example, can change the flow of traffic and cars by your business. Like all of these things can have an impact. So, where do people fall down on the due diligence here? Is they don't have anything set up to inform them about how traffic or development changes where their business is located may impact them. And so people will often notice the changes in a neighborhood over time, especially if it hurts them. So, for example, if back in the 60s and 70s, a lot of business was done on street level in certain neighborhoods, and then all these shopping malls started to be built. Those merchants on the neighborhood streets certainly noticed, and those who made the move to the mall probably survived, and the ones who stayed behind had a harder and harder time. So people certainly noticed that over the course of time, but there could be a massive change that is coming through with respect to redevelopment that could create opportunities for you to move to a bigger, brighter location and stay in the neighborhood. There could be, if you own the property where your business is located, there could be redevelopment opportunities. So if you're in one of those older neighborhoods and big skyscrapers are going up all around you, maybe it makes sense to know this so you can start to plan for maybe 10 years out that you're going to move your business to an industrial park or something like that, right? So, how do you keep an eye on this without being involved in everything that the planning commission and the city council is talking about all the time? It used to be that all you had to do is read the evening newspaper and have a network of people in the community and you would hear these things. Today, what I recommend to people is that they set up with Google Alerts. So you go into Google Alerts, you can put certain keywords. So you can mention, the name of your street and your city, and you can mention maybe a highway number or a neighborhood name. And you can just set up all of these different alerts with respect to the location your business is in. And every time those things are talked about in a news article online, Google's going to snip that and send you a link and say, hey, here's another instance of your neighborhood being mentioned. 99% of the stuff is going to be no impact. It's going to be like, oh, an article about, the people at the church doing a bake sale or whatever. But you will notice if there's something that's being discussed, like, hey, we're going to change the highway on ramp. And if that's going to have an impact on you, then you need to know so you can make plans around it. So again, big material impacts on certain businesses, especially if you're a business that people need to go to physically to do business. Number 4, this is a big one, customer credit risk. Just this morning when I was out for my morning walk, I listened to a podcast where a guy talked about being in business, and over the course of several years, his biggest customer grew from 20% of his business up to 50% of his business. And as they grew, of course, they had 30-day terms. The amount of business they were doing with him grew and grew, and the amount of accounts receivable grew and grew. Then they went bankrupt. And it took him 7 weeks before he went bankrupt, right? So, what was his problem? He was not keeping good visibility. He wasn't doing due diligence on the customer. He was facing greater and greater risk in that customer's ability to manage their business and the impact that their failure might have on his business. So, when you are going to offer terms to other companies that want to buy from you, you should have a credit process in place. I've talked about this before, but uh, somebody who wants to come and do business with you for the first time, especially if you're not chasing them, like if you pursue an account and you chase after them and you keep talking with them, and then finally they decide to place an order with you, you feel really good about making the sale. But if you've never heard of them and all of a sudden they call you up and they want to buy from you, that can be an indicator that they're having problems with their current suppliers, like maybe they're not paying their bills, right? So you want to have some kind of system in place to assess the credit worthiness of someone who wants to buy from you and obtain credit from you. So this is where in your own business experience, maybe you reach out to a new supplier and at first they say, well, give us your credit card. We want to do business with you for a while before we give you a 30-day account. That's their management of their credit risk with you. They want to get to know you and develop a relationship with you. If someone wants to do a lot of business with you and have a lot of credit open with you, then you should have some kind of underwriting process or due diligence process on them. So I've seen, for example, people in the plumbing supply industry. where a lot of contractors will be buying from them, they'll have a requirement that those contractors submit tax returns or financial statements to them if they want to move their credit limit above a certain threshold. So maybe they'll extend them up to $30,000 in accounts receivable limit, right? And then once they hit that, they got to pay it down. They can't have any more credit. And so as the contractor grows, maybe they need to buy 100,000 a month worth and they want 30-day terms. They're going to have to demonstrate their credit worthiness to the supplier before they lift the limit. And this is what a lot of small businesses fail to do. They get so excited about the sales and they get so excited about the customer and the increased profitability of having a bigger and bigger customer that they fail to realize the risk that they're taking by being exposed to a customer like this. So this is a competition risk or customer credit risk, sorry. Number 5 is regulatory risk. So, if you are in an industry, any industry, there is an opportunity for the government to create a new rule that affects you, right? And so, this is where participation in trade associations is important, industry associations, because often if there is a change to rules, the industry association is going to be on top of that. That's part of what they do, is just to make sure that they know what's going on industry wide. Sometimes, if a government believes that there's some sort of problem, if people are being taken advantage of, or there's, you know, other issues, they might say, "Hey, we need to introduce rules for whatever reason, consumer protection, environmental protection, what have you," right? And so, if you are aware that the government is looking at these rules, it can create another opportunity for you. So, when a government wants to create a rule, what they often do, and particularly affecting certain businesses, is they will approach those businesses and ask for input. This is your opportunity, whether through a trade association or on your own, to engage in what big companies have been doing for a long time, which is called regulatory capture. So, what is regulatory capture? It's when you propose to a government a certain set of rules that they should enact in law, and it's almost impossible for people that aren't already in that industry to meet those rules. So, what ends up happening? You create this barrier around your industry. Everyone wants a business with a moat. Not, if you can't create a moat with government regulation around your own business, the next best thing is to create it around your industry. So now you've got this thing that prevents new entrants from coming in and competing with you, right? So the other thing about regulation is that if rules are coming down that you are unaware of, then suddenly you can be affected in a negative way, which can cause you to have all kinds of problems, even cause you to go out of business. I can think about one person I was listening to talk again in another podcast. They had a business in the credit counseling industry, and the government changed the rules and basically made a lot of what they were doing into something illegal. And so they basically were out of business, and they did see it coming. They tried to lobby, but other interests who wanted to see them close had a much more effective lobby. And basically, the people were influencing the rules to basically change the competitive landscape. And if that's a risk for you, you want to be keeping an eye on it. Area number 6 is competition. So you want to be continuously monitoring what is happening with your competition. And again, what I mentioned before about Google Alerts is another thing you can implement here. You know who your biggest competitors are. If you have salespeople out there, they are listening to the prospective customers. They're hearing what the competition is offering to the prospective customers as well. They can be an important source of information about what's going on in the market. But you should be putting your competitors' names into a Google alert. You should also be signing up with an anonymous, email account, and you should be getting yourselves onto their marketing list if they're using email marketing, so that you are getting delivered to your inbox all of their promotions, specials, etc., so you can keep an eye on what they're doing. Let me tell you a fun story. So I once called on this co-op grocery store, and this was back when newspaper flyers were the big way that grocery stores were advertising. And the big chain grocery stores, they were getting their flyers delivered on Wednesday by the newspaper. It was a daily newspaper. And so, um, what this co-op grocery store manager was doing is he used a local printer, and they set aside a window of time on Wednesday late morning for printing his flyers. And so what he would do is Wednesday morning, he would get the newspaper with the flyers from the major grocery chains, and then he would come up with his flyer based on beating their prices, and he could get his flyer printed by his printer later that morning and then have it delivered to the newspaper for insertion Thursdays, right? So he literally beat them every week on every product that he chose to compete with them on because he literally had their specials before he had his flyer printed, right? I mean, that's like the ultimate in sort of competitive intelligence. The other way that this is an important, or another way you can implement this to help your business, is if there is another operator in your industry in a faraway place you don't directly compete with that you have great admiration for, put a Google alert on them, get on their email list too, and just look at what they're doing because maybe they're implementing or doing something that uh, you could R&D, which is short for rip off and duplicate, right? And you could take that great idea and implement it in your own marketplace. And so, you know, classic example is if you happen to own sort of one of these small minor league sports teams, of course, you want to find out everything that the Savannah Bananas are doing, right? Because you could take some of their ideas and implement them yourself. So those are the six sort of areas of external due diligence that have to be continuously done in a business. Now, who's responsible for these things? Obviously, if you are a person who owns a business or you've bought a business, then you're going to be keenly interested in making sure that these things are being done. And I was having a fun conversation with someone the other day about this notion that keeps going around the internet about buying a business and putting a manager in charge, right? This whole idea that you can buy a business and put an operator in charge and the operator will run it. I can tell you that if you buy a business, one business, and you tie up personal guarantees and a bunch of your net worth, and it's the biggest thing that you own, you are not going to leave these kinds of things in the hands of a manager, right? It's just too big a risk. You have too much interest in seeing the success of this business to do that. If you were investing all of your money in pipeline stocks, publicly traded companies, would you just buy the stock and go away and never look at them again? Of course not. You'd be reading about the energy industry. You'd be reading about the macro conditions in the economy and the demand for natural gas and oil. You would be looking for reasons why the future was good or bad for your pipeline stock. And you would always want to know if it made sense for you to get out of that investment, right? And so even in the most passive of investments, right? Buying publicly traded stock with other people running the companies, the owner of the investment has a deep need or requirement or responsibility to keep an eye on what's going on. In the businesses that I know who legitimately have owners who do not go there every day, who have owners that manage the day to day, this operator, you know, setup that everyone's talking about, um, they still do these things. These six things are still on the plate of the owner. They're still the ones who are doing this continuous surveillance of what's happening in the market, the regulatory scene, the neighborhood scene, location. They're the ones who are making sure that they're like looking at the accounts receivable aging list sometimes weekly and then calling their manager if one of them seems out of line. Like the reality of small business ownership is that these things never get delegated until you become a person that legitimately owns a whole bunch of different business interests so that sort of a portfolio risk management kind of scenario can be in place. So like, if you owned seven businesses, then you could afford to delegate more of this kind of stuff to leaders in those businesses because if one of them messed up in a huge way, it's not taking you entirely down, which it could if you owned one business or two, right? Like, not paying attention to one of these things can just take you out of the water, just like it did in the example that I gave with the person I was telling you about on the podcast, whose biggest customer grew to 50% of revenue. They went bankrupt, and it took him 7 weeks to go bankrupt. Anyway, so if you think that you're up to the task and you want to become a business owner and you want to buy a business, head over to businessbuyeradvantage.com. I am currently working on a brand new module which will be added. All present and past students get access to every new module as they are added. And so the one that I'm working on right now is all about private investors for Main Street and the lower end of the mid-market businesses. And the content that you're going to find in this module about raising private investment for doing acquisitions in this space is going to be very different from a lot of the content that you find online, which is geared more towards larger businesses, like businesses that have EBITDAs of $1 million or something. So this is going to be more geared towards the smaller businesses and it's going to be filled with real actual examples of people that I've worked with over the years and my own examples that I've worked on where I've raised money from investors. And so that's going to be coming out here this fall. And so I would highly recommend that you sign up now because it will give you time to go through all the materials that are already there, which are considerable. Like there's like 35 hours of content in there now. Learn the stuff, get yourself ready so that when I drop the new material, you're ready to go. And of course, every time I add a new significant and valuable module, I usually tend to adjust the price. And of course, this is a way for you to beat that as well over at businessbuyerAdvantage.com. And with that, I'll say see you later and we'll talk to you next week. Cheers. Let me know what you think. Add your comments down below. Bye.
So, how can you learn more about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium sized businesses? Easy. Go over to my blog site, davidcbarnett.com, where you can learn more about me and how I work with my clients. You can learn more about my books and courses that I've prepared for you. You can find out how to subscribe to my email list, the YouTube playlists, and more. There's literally hundreds of hours of content there, all for free, and I'd love for you to be my guest. Special thanks go to Mark Willis at Lake Growth Financial, today's video sponsor. Mark helps people better manage their personal and business finances through the Bank on Yourself insurance strategy. This is something I've done personally and I've seen others use it successfully for years. Go to newbankingsolution.com to find all the interviews I've done with Mark and learn more about the advantages of these programs. While there, sign up for a free consultation to learn what this solution might look like for you.